Okay. And away we go. Welcome to another edition of Are You Shitting Me?
My name's Aaron.
And I am Brett.
Thank you for joining us.
Appreciate it. We've got an interesting topic here today.
Yes, indeed.
We have
very topical topic.
It is a topical topic.
Ah.
We do have a guest co-host with us today, Adrian. Adrian is a gentleman that I know. He's from Chicago, Illinois originally. He's dad. You said what, three and a half year old?
She's 3.5, yeah.
That's awesome.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here.
Pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're too kind.
Yeah.
I know you've listened to the show before, and it's too kind. I can't believe we got you to come on. This is great.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk about everybody's favorite topic today.
Aaron, what is our topic today?
Oh, we are diving into the political realm.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Actually, more just kind of politics in general. We're going to talk about a little bit of the history of some of the things that we do in this nation and why and what makes sense and what doesn't. And I think hopefully the people up on top listen to this and decide, yep, we were right and we should change everything. So,
who are those people at top?
I don't know. Nobody knows. It's those guys.
They know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Before we do that, why don't we get into an episode beer? Yeah. I asked Adrian to grace us with a beer today, and what'd you pick out?
Yeah, to keep it on topic, I figured I'd bring this very political looking beer called Just Vote. It's by Bow Arrow Brewing Company in Albuquerque. It's not far from the intersection of Interstate I-40 and I-25 if anybody's looking to go down there and visit.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
It sounds like I'll have to hear about that a little bit later.
I've never heard of this brewery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
now you know exactly where it is.
Yeah. I want to go find it.
No, but it's a IPA. It actually caught my eye because it's a double New England hazy, but they called it a double oat hazy, which I actually had no idea.
I didn't know that was a thing.
So neither did I. So that might just be Untapped trying to sell this beer on their behalf. But it's a community collaboration with their friends from the Protect the Sacred, which is an organization down there.
Okay.
And it was motivated by their desire to ensure that voices are heard no matter where, including at the polls. And I wanted to make sure that people were registered to vote, which is why the Just Vote campaign that they started is around. So they say to ride, walk, run, drive to the polls. And it's basically just an orange cream, grapefruit, lime citrus IPA with dank pineapple and mango.
Dank.
And
yes.
that also is one of the reasons why it's here. And it says it has a touch of coconut and vanilla. I thought that was an interesting combination.
Interesting.
A little bit of both sides action going on in this.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Both
well, it's what they did,
sides.
but yeah.
Wow.
The can's cool too. It's got the red, white, and blue big Just Vote. Looks like the stickers you wear after you
Just voted?
Yeah, you just voted, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a sharp looking can.
Yeah.
All right, let's
Crack
give
it
this
open.
a little taste test.
I like the color. I'm a big fan of hazies. So
And this is really hazy.
I was glad that it
is.
So it said it was a double hazy?
Double oat.
Double oat.
Good. Actually, it smells very mild for an IPA.
It doesn't smell as hoppy. You get a lot more of the citrus
Yeah,
than anything else.
Wow.
My nose doesn't work so well, but I get pineapple.
This is probably one of the smoothest IPAs I've ever had.
For this to be a double, yeah, this is actually really...
Maybe that's why, because a double, took some of the edge off of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I'm really impressed by it. I mean,
Surprisingly
maybe it's just a dirty beer, but it's really hazy. I got good lacing in there too.
I do get the hint of coconut at the end.
I was looking for it.
After it sits there for a little bit, I get just a little bit in the back. Not a lot, though.
No.
Pineapple for sure I get.
Adrian, you are a fan of beer. You're very knowledgeable in the beer world about...
Oh, gosh. I mean, I try. I think I was a lot more knowledgeable before, like, the craft beer explosion, because then it seemed like everybody was doing a lot more with the expertise and the experimentation and all that than I ever was. But I just enjoyed really good beer, and I love a good hazy.
Yeah. Is that your go-to, a hazy? Or
if it's on, so if I go to a place, I'll always look at their draft selection. And 9 times out of 10, if they have a hazy I haven't tried, I'll go ahead and I'll do that. But I do really like trying beers that I know I may not get a chance to get again.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that keeps me open to looking at new handles, looking at beer lists, and even seeing something that might be seasonal, especially when I go and visit out of town.
Yeah.
There's some great breweries in this country. Trying to see what they're known for. But yeah, hazy IPAs, I really do like...
What's your go-to?
I wish I had one. I really don't.
Look at you being all inclusive. That's awesome.
Yeah, my go-tos always are never around and are never everywhere at the same time. So I have to jump around. My go-to used to be back in the day was like a Blue Moon or a Stella, just because they were consistent. Like I was never like a Miller Lite, Bud Light guy, which I wish I was because you can get that anywhere.
Right.
But so for me, it was always
It's like drinking water.
Yeah. So I guess I always had to jump around the beer lists out of necessity because my favorite beer of the moment isn't here today, so let me see what else I can try. So that's kept me flexible. I know that I probably won't order a stout or a porter.
I'm sorry, we got to stop this show right now.
I was
not going to order a stout.
I was going to say
out
unless it looks something about it looks intriguing or it's like cold outside, especially
Brett and I are both stouts fans, as you can probably tell by the Gandalf beards.
I think it's part of the uniform. You can't
exactly.
have,
Brett's second favorite beer though is IPA.
Yeah.
Oh, God. God, no. You know how many I've tried, especially, I don't know, it seemed a year ago or so that IPAs were just everywhere. You could not get away from them.
Yeah.
And I want to like it, but, again, like if it tastes like a pine tree.
Yeah.
I'm not into it. And I do think that's obviously people doing some late hop additions.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are just killing it. You're like bad.
Yeah.
Not in a good way.
Did you like the dry hop revolution of 2022? That was a fun one.
And I'm also very anti, we've got 9 different hops in here. I want to know what one hop tastes like.
Right.
Give me that.
Yeah.
Make a good beer with one hop.
I hear that.
I do like though these hazy ones or the 120-minute hopped IPAs and those things.
120 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, those are great. Yeah. Those are my favorite IPAs all around.
Yeah. I could do doubles and triples, but other than that, give me a good stout.
Yeah.
I could mow the lawn and drink a stout afterwards.
Do you like Guinness
No.
at all?
I could do a black and tan.
So,
but
the less Guinness in it, the more
right,
like
yeah, exactly. And we've talked about this
We
before.
used to do Irish car bombs when we were in college, remember?
Oh, that might be what's triggering PTSD.
Guinness was the first stout that I tried.
Okay.
And
probably.
I think a lot of people do. And I did not like it.
I think it's unfortunate that because it is such a popular brand, and I didn't mind Guinness. It wasn't bad, but it's not. Now that I know what stouts are and I've tried a bunch of different stouts and the wealth of stouts that are out there, Guinness ranks really low for me. And it tastes burnt a little bit to me. Most.
For me, and I'm certified from Guinness. I've been to Dublin. I've been to the Guinness brewery.
Of course.
But yeah, it does have a burntness to it. And from Guinness, it's because of the way they roast their malts. And it's originally designed to withstand the transport back in the day from over the seas in the salty air. So that and adding a lot more hops to it and making it bitter.
Interesting.
Drink to it.
I didn't know that history about that. That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I'm telling you, there's far more. I didn't realize how many varieties of Guinness there was until I went and tried them.
We should do an episode on that.
I'm thinking road trip to Ireland, dude. Let's go check this out.
I think it's I'm in.
Road trip, yes.
You rent the car. I'll meet you there.
Let's talk about politics.
That's right. Yeah, we had talked, I don't know, maybe a year ago about trying to do a political episode.
Yeah.
And we definitely wanted to stay away from being divisive.
Yeah.
And we decided that we wanted to have a discussion trying to figure out a little bit more about what the hell is going on. I think some of it also started with the lesser of two evils.
Right.
And why do we have two evils that are going to be our president? Like, why is that okay? Why are we okay as a nation that's what we're doing?
Right.
And so that's where the idea of this started from.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I was thinking about that, but it's just something we always we say.
Right.
But like the lesser of two choices, I don't want either of them in here right now, and it's frustrating.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you clarified that. I don't think my candidate or whoever is, or any of them even, are evil. Mm-hmm. But I think it's the word choices that we use that kind of makes people go down that route.
Yeah.
Because even just telling yourself, oh, it's the lesser of two evils, you're not really going to look for the reasons why they're good. You're just going to look for the reasons why they're not as bad. So I think a lot of that is a framing in our own minds. Not to get too political with who I'm backing or who my candidates specifically are, but I think a lot of people kind of tune out the good stuff because they're looking for reasons not to vote for somebody.
It's so easy in today's society anyway, with social media and everything else. Yeah. It's a short attention span. It's dirty laundry being thrown out everywhere. It's sensationalism. It's all this stuff that's what we do now, and that's all we're attracted to.
Yeah, because good news doesn't get ratings. You can build 100 bridges.
Who hears about Jimmy Carter anymore?
What?
Who's Jimmy Carter?
You guys are old.
I'm just kidding. It's like the last, until Trump, he was the last one-term president I think we had, right?
No.
A history lesson for
George Bush Sr., no?
Yeah.
Was any one term?
Senior was.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Of course I'm right.
That was way before my time. That's what I read it.
But to your point, like, why can't we have more candidates all around? Not just even in the two parties, but why not even more parties? The Green Party, the Independent Party, those things.
Yeah, and they exist. But the problem, as you probably notice, is that they don't really have the same kind of gravitas or the same kind of pull that the two big parties do. And that's, I think, for a reason.
Money.
I hesitate to say that it's money because a lot of it is money, obviously, because politics revolves around money. The last third-party candidate that had a chance was Ross Perot, and it was only because he had money.
He used his money to get started.
And that was before the corporate money machine in the politics really got off the ground. Yeah. That just goes to show how rich he actually was, more than anything. But
he was probably the most successful independent candidate in recent times, don't you think?
We'll cover that. I disagree.
Let's disagree right now. Let's talk about it right now.
The number one, Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, all right. You can't
I said in recent times.
Because he was part of the Bull Moose.
exactly. Which was only around for that election cycle.
Yeah, it has not fared well recently.
I don't know. If you go back, the Know Nothing Party of 1820 really seemed to pull the power out of those Whigs' hands. What are we talking about here? Come on.
No. 1912, by the way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people derided him for his more socialist practices that he wanted to bring in, which I think was what his party was really all about.
Yeah. So, he arguably helped get Woodrow Wilson elected. But, yeah.
Yeah.
So he got 27% of the popular vote, apparently.
Interesting. Really?
Yeah.
Of the popular vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I do think, so going back to our modern topics, though, the third parties, money, I think, is a big part of it. Yeah. And even like media exposure, like they just don't cover it. And I think it's not, no one's exposed to it. I feel like if we had the equal amount with multiple, with a few different other parties in there, I think people would be more prone to do it. The problem is I don't think anyone's going to split from their main party.
And it's that last point that I think is more important because, and I bring it up to a lot of people that are like, oh, we need a good third party. But they're not even at the grassroots level. And that's where the money is the most out of it. Sure, you have people that are running, but if you look at your village boards and like your local level politics, there's nobody that's a Green Party candidate. At best, maybe you'll get an independent. And that doesn't mean anything other than they don't want to polarize themselves by choosing one side or the other. Because at the end of the day, I think most people, if you really attack the politics, are going to be down the middle of the road somewhere.
Yeah. Or even if it goes back to kind of what we were talking about, the lesser two evils, I might want to go independent, but because I really don't want one candidate or another,
right? Because you still favor one over the other.
One way because I'd rather this person than that. Right. And I know that unfortunately, I know that my independent vote right now is going nowhere.
Right.
It's a throwaway vote.
And it's very few and far between. I'm into politics, and I can't think of anybody other than Bernie Sanders, which I think we've brought up before, who was always an independent and unabashedly until it comes to presidential election season, and then he has. I guess he feels like he has to be.
But I think part of it is because he can't. A true independent at the presidential level, in my opinion, and I get it. They have some rules which I disagree with. They can't get into a debate if you can't come up with 15 or 20% of a poll and show that you have the numbers, then we don't even want to hear you. Fuck, these people aren't going to get heard at all unless we get them on a debate.
And you have to do that by state, you were saying. I think we were talking about the other day. Like you might get on a debate in California, but you might not do that in South Dakota.
And that's every state is a little bit different.
I think you have to poll higher in like a certain amount of polls to.
Yeah, I think it's four different polls. You have to have 15 or 20%.
And that's a good conversation to have as far as like the presidential elections go. Once the candidates have been picked. But those are rules for the primaries too. So the Republicans primary, you had to have a certain threshold before being allowed, because otherwise you'll have 15 people up there. And if you have that, you're almost in the same boat, because you're not going to give anybody enough time to really make a case for themselves, and you're going to default to the.
I don't know.
So there has to be some limits.
Let's have the first one have anybody that's a registered voter and wants to be in there. I don't know, maybe the first one, they get all heard.
We should have a March Madness inspired tournament.
Get all heard day.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
You got 64 candidates.
You're put in a bracket.
You win your division, you move on. And if that doesn't work, they just wrestle each other.
We can use betting. They can use betting to raise political packing.
No, because there's already enough money in politics. The last thing we need is for Vegas to get involved. Right, guys? Let's just. I regret bringing that up.
Yeah.
I don't want
move to strike that.
I feel like I just opened Pandora's box there. But
I think that money and media are two of the biggest factors, and I think they go very hand in hand.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest change from now in the Teddy Roosevelt days, because back then there were a lot more parties, and if you look at our history, it wasn't really until the 50s or 60s, recent memory for some, that we didn't have all of these crazy sounding party names and a bunch of different people and power changing hands from established parties to parties that only existed for one administration.
Right. Well, I think media was different then too. They did cover obviously the three candidates, but then you still had to go and you still had to hop on those whistle stop tours and go and meet people and talk to people and that kind of stuff. And not that they don't do that here now, but that was the only way a lot of these people were being introduced to these politicians.
There's no way you're going to get the media or money out of politics.
Yeah.
So then I guess maybe your better question now is how best can we go forward to make sure that we still have more of a say? I think is probably a better question in who we pick as our leaders for parties. And
I think we really have to charge that vote. And I feel like still there's so many Americans out there who don't vote or just, my candidate's not going to win, so why even bother?
My vote doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I absolutely hate. Like, speaking of this beer, go vote. Get out and vote, people.
Just vote.
Just vote.
Just
Thanks.
vote. Yeah.
Let's try that again. Speaking of this beer, just vote.
Go vote was their first. I think that was just a golden ale. Yeah.
That was the last
Didn't
election.
have as much bite. Yeah.
Just, it bugs me, not to get all philosophical, but we are one of the few countries where you do make a difference when you vote. And we have so many people who just dismiss it and don't take that civil liberty.
But let me throw this out there now.
Civil right, a civil liberty, and it's civil something.
In more recent years, there's been more mistrust in the vote, though. Now, so that's another part of it too.
You mean
now
like
people,
the actual voting, the box,
getting out there.
But I think that's more a smear campaign-esque than anything else, because
but it works.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because the people are people. I don't want to say that the masses are fickle, but there's a lot of confirmation bias happening. If your guy didn't win and you've made him part of your identity, you're going to look for any reason in the world to make that not true.
Yeah.
Just for you to save your own sense of self. And I think that's a real big problem now, because politics has become, for whatever reason, the thing that people don't want to talk about has become the biggest part of their personalities, to the point where they're willing to distance themselves from family members, from loved ones, from divorces, stuff like that, all because your guy, for whatever reason, didn't win or...
Yeah. And that's something, I know you and I have talked about this. One of the things that bugs me is that people don't want to talk about it.
Yep. I think that's the biggest problem.
Like, you need to talk about it. You can't...
What do you mean? I blast posted some guy I didn't even know the other day. Talked all I wanted to say about it.
Oh, politics. Got it. Yeah. I was like, where did this conversation go?
Wow, this took a turn.
I've blast posted some myself in my day, but it's about something else.
Wow, I'm not bragging about it. It is so sad that everybody is so high-strung or whatever it is, or so, it's not even that they're invested, but they're all in on a candidate, and it is such a divisive thing. And Adrian, you and I have talked about it, like, you have to be willing to talk to people and hear their side, or Adrian has done for me, like, in a polite way, like, I'll say, X, Y, Z, and really give me an example of X, Y, or Z, and I'm like, I can't. He's like, all right, then maybe you need to rethink what you're talking about. Right. Oh, yeah, maybe you're right.
Yeah. And I think the only way that you get that context, which I think is what everybody's missing, it's really easy to just follow the headlines, especially if it's something that you want to believe to be true. Because then it's, I don't need to read that article because I trust what the headline says, so I'm just going to go with that. But then you bring that out in conversation if it happens, and then you're stuck without any backup to what you have made your convictions.
I think there's an interesting point there, too, that politics is very divisive, but then you take a step back, and back when we were growing up, journalism was supposed to be unbiased journalism, presented as this is the both sides.
Sure.
You make your decision.
These are facts.
And I don't know if it actually was. Maybe it did swing one way or the other, but I always felt like it was a little bit more unbiased coming out. But take a step back now, and whatever media you consume is also biased.
Sure.
And it's hard to find the truth, I think, these days for a lot of people without just having a conversation.
So I was reading something that was really interesting, and I had to look, because I don't know, because I didn't grow up on the Tom Brokaws and the Walter Cronkites and these established journalists that my elders were like, oh, this was back when journalism, you could respect it and you can trust it.
That was definitely back when journalism was respected and trusted.
But they always wore their heart on their sleeves too. And the article that I was reading was basically saying they weren't unbiased. They were very biased. Right. They were often more biased than news now, because like especially when things mattered, like when the Vietnam War came out, like they were all like, this is bad. We shouldn't be doing this, blah, blah, blah. They wore their heart on their sleeves. But I think people trusted them because there was no alternative. You couldn't, even if you didn't agree with them, you didn't have a Alex Jones to go and listen to give you the other side of the story, quote unquote. So I think that kind of had an inherent level of trust, because when you don't have an alternative response to something, it's like you have to give that a little bit more thought and a little bit more weight. But I guarantee you that if we had the internet and the social media the way it was now back during Vietnam, bro, that war would be so different here. And just because then you would have those two sides kind of thing, where some people think we should be there and some people don't think we. And when every voice has equal vote, it's harder to drown out the bad voices.
So I'm going to segue off of that. How come social media has not helped the independent candidates? You would think
it's free source of access.
If you're trending,
maybe we just haven't had any sexy independent.
Is that it? Is it not entertaining?
I think it's just that there's not a lot past it. Think back to who's your favorite third-party candidate that you can think of in the last 10 years, 15 years, we'll say. Because
my like one that I really liked, or
give me one that you really like, or one that you actually really thought was very popular or popular enough to bring up.
I can't even name one.
Yeah, Ross Perot is the only one that comes to mind.
30 years ago.
Right. And then, of course, Kennedy.
Sure, yeah, but which is technically a Democrat just running as an independent. But I think that's generally what you end up getting when you go independent, is you fall one way more.
They don't
look
good on social media.
No, I'm saying that they're like, it goes back to not having a grassroots presence. Like you don't have anybody to root for. Like in the state senate, there's no Green Party Obama who was a state senator who had a rousing speech or whatever. Like people can't even name the Green Party candidate this time around. You know, I don't even know if they've chosen one this time.
To your point though, Brett, I think maybe there is some emerging stuff. You know, there's a lot of politics on TikTok right now as well, and I feel like some of those younger people are now starting to try to push that way a little bit, and maybe there might be some cool independent stuff coming out here in the next 10 years.
I feel like
from
there should be, right? Like how come or something like that, and but like you said, I mean, you don't.
It's not being fed to me. Like when I'm scrolling, I might not be the target audience.
Well, to be honest, I don't look up on social media, so I'm not getting fed that that stuff either.
And there's I'm not saying anything I say to think that there's no way out, because there's opportunity. And even back in, I'll answer my question to you myself, because the biggest ones back in the 10, 15 years, in my perspective, it's Gary Johnson and Jill Stein. The only reason that they had any kind of presence at the polling was because back then it was also a lesser of two evils type conversation. Yeah. And the only support that they were getting was more anti against the two candidates and just trying to put their chips somewhere else.
Right. One of her things was like, she's the choice outside of the two-party system that has obviously failed us.
Right. And it's interesting because there was no Republicans that were like anti-Trump that were voting Jill Stein. There was still even then a delineation. Like the people that didn't want for Hillary Clinton were voting for Jill Stein, and the people that didn't want to vote for Trump voted for Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate. So you still had your camps back then. So even in a time when we had two fairly successful third parties, the answer was still not them being the answer, just they didn't want to vote for somebody else. Yeah. So there needs to be something else that needs to happen. And I honestly don't think the Green Party is it. Because I think the Green Party would be better off just coalescing with the Democrat Party and just unifying with the progressives in that party, because I think they align more with them than they do with establishment.
So if it sticks
Democrats.
to the two-party system, like right now, we're seeing politics move further and further away from each other,
Right.
and everything swings further and further away. Brett and I were talking about this last night. Like even the party I'm in, I would go this way, and then it would, and they're still going much further than I want to go.
I think everything keeps splitting and branching off even more and more. So it used to be all Republican, and then that split, and then those two splits now are 4 different parties or groups.
And I actually think that's healthy and normal and a long time coming, because like we were joking around earlier about like the Whig parties and the Know Nothings, and that's how they started. The only reason that we have the Republican Party is because Lincoln broke apart from what was then the Democrat Party, because he had different ideas as to what was going to happen in the South and the North and all that. But that's why, because there was fractures within the parties that basically you couldn't, coalesce back together and decided this is either you can stay with this party but this is where I'm going now.
Why can't we get those moderates from Republican and Democrats to branch towards each other? And you hit on it, and I've heard this. I have no factual data to back it up, but that most people identify as moderate. They I'm right in the middle. But when it comes to voting,
sure. At the end of the day, you're 80% moderate. So if you're the same as everybody else, you're going to look at those issues that you're different, and that's how you get like a 1-issue voter or 2-issue voter. Yeah. And so you're like, everything else is basically in a vacuum. So I'm going to make immigration my issue, or I'm going to make abortion my issue, and then you have a clear choice.
Right. Let's switch to a different subject here. There's been a few elections in the recent times where there's popular vote doesn't necessarily mean the candidate wins. Yeah. And that kind of goes into the electoral college kind of stuff. I know it's a hot topic that I think is interesting to dive into. Like, why do we have it? Why do we need it? I was looking at online, just looking at the electoral college, and it was interesting to me because I always thought that it had evolved back in the day when we didn't have obviously internet or phones, or each state had to have their own kind of representative who they sent to Washington, who represented that state, and then they cast their vote for that state because they did their own independent election. And we don't need that now. We have digital access to we can count votes real time. Do we need it, and why? I don't understand why we need it.
Everything you said was right, but there was an element, and I think I could be wrong, but I think Hamilton brought it up when they were drawing up the Constitution. Yeah, I think it was the third song, The Room Where It Happened. No, one of the things that he made clear why they wanted the Electoral College is because the masses are fickle, like I mentioned earlier, and it would be too easy for some showman to come in and win that popular vote with lies and deceit. The actual quote that he had circulated a lot when Trump was coming into power, because this is what they were talking about. Like some charismatic leader can really win that support just with charisma alone and popularity. And so the Electoral College was meant to be a check against an authoritarian, charismatic leader like that, because that obviously could lead to its
But even
own
that's
issues.
getting now corrupt these days, because they keep going and rezoning how these work so that they lean towards one another. So that's like automatic. You can't win in one party or another if you didn't have it, which is just interesting.
And at the end of the day, my answers are, there's 2 things that I think would fix the entire electoral process that we have in general without having to change how the popular vote of the Electoral College actually votes. And that's really just
having a valid ID when you get to the box.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, but one is ranked choice voting, because I think that would eliminate a lot of what people think is throwing away their vote.
So the ranked choice stuff, I'm not familiar with it. I've never been in an election that uses it, but that's where you rank your top 3 choices, and everybody does that.
That's right. You were telling me about that the other day. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, and I know that it's starting to get a little bit more traction, and it's used in some, I don't know if it's governor races, but definitely some mayoral races around the country.
Yeah, I think New York just had their first.
I don't know much about it. Do you?
So ranked choice is actually really interesting because, and I think the best analogy that I have is people who have worked jobs where they have to work during the holidays, especially Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, that kind of stuff, where you put in your requests off, but you have to rank them. It's like you're gonna get 1 or 2 of these days off, but you have to list them in order and put your 4 choices in that order. And you may get your first 2 options, you may not. but you're guaranteed to get one of them. And so the idea is the same, especially going back to the 2016 election. That's probably the best example with real people. Gary Johnson got 5% of the vote, and Jill Stein, I think, got 2% of the vote. The other two candidates obviously were split a little bit more closely, but in ranked choice voting, if either of those candidates didn't get a majority, they would go back, and then in that case, Gary Johnson's 2%, they would be able to go to their second option. So let's say Brett, you were a Gary Johnson supporter back then, and you were, I can't vote for Trump, but there's no way I'm voting for Hillary. It's going to be Gary Johnson, then Trump, and then Jill Stein. Those are your top three.
Sure.
So then, obviously, when the votes get tallied, your 2% candidate didn't win. So then all of the Gary Johnson people, since he got last place, they would cut out their top choice and then they'd go to their second choice. So in that case, yours would be Trump. And so then Trump would get your vote.
Interesting.
So in that case, then you resettle, and then if nobody has a majority, it's got to be majority. If nobody has the majority, then it goes back to that third candidate, and then the Jill Stein, the 5%ers, whatever their second candidate was. And in that case, it most likely would have been Hillary Clinton. And so then all those 5%, the 5% of the population that voted for Jill Stein potentially would have gone to Hillary Clinton. And that way you keep chopping away at the low profile candidates, but still giving voice to those votes. Right. In terms of, okay, you didn't get your first pick, sorry.
So if everybody just happened to show up and say, all right, I want Jill Stein on this election, and you just happen to be part of that, then your candidate won, and otherwise...
otherwise you'd still get your vote tallied, but it'd be your second choice.
That does open up the door for these third-party candidates to kind of get in easier. I kind of like that.
And it really does, because if you, in that same example, if you look at it and it's got to be Hillary Clinton, but if it's not Hillary Clinton, it's not going to be Trump. So then Jill Stein becomes number 2.
Yeah.
So then in that way, Jill Stein might end up being, even though she had a 5%, if she had the majority of second choice, she could potentially be in a running where it could be split.
You can still vote for the person you really want to vote for without worrying about casting that vote away and just throwing it.
I think that's what it does. It helps eliminate that wasted vote feeling.
And you don't feel like, even if you are a person that doesn't want to vote, or you feel disenfranchised, you're like, I'm not going to vote, what does it matter? That gives you a reason, because the top 2 are heavy hitters. But if they don't get 50%, which is a lot nowadays, especially as divided as we are, then that third party, that fourth party, that all those other candidates have a better chance of cracking into, even if it's not to win this election. Ross Perot getting 30%. If that happened today, I guarantee you that whatever party he chose going around the next time around might be able to attract a higher profile candidate who actually has some political weight, like a Bernie Sanders. There's literally 5 people that are independents in national politics right now. But I think that's a good way forward.
I dig that. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I think
I hadn't heard that way before, but I like that a lot.
And it's new to us, but because we've decided that the Constitution and the way they drew it up was perfect back then. But a lot of countries have done it. I think France, their primary system is based on that. That's why they have 20 parties on each side. And like I said, New York, I think, did it. I think New York State is about to do it. San Francisco, I think, is going that route. It's starting to trickle in. It's starting to trickle down in terms of...
It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah. There are some places in the Northeast. You go onto the state's election pages... They have, and forgive me, I don't know the exact number, but for example, they have 50 different political parties that are registered with the state. And I'm like, I didn't even know there were that many. And some of them are, we're the Rose Party because we all like roses and everybody should have rose. I didn't know that was a thing, but sure. And I think some states limit those things. You can't have a party just because you want to make up a party. But at the same time...
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, maybe we should.
Yeah, you can have a party if you want to have
the rent is too damn high party. That's an actual party.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Shout out to those guys.
Yeah. They've had their same candidate run in the last 4 elections. That's consistency, my friend.
That is consistency. That's determination or something. I'm not familiar with them. Are they local?
I think they're national. It's a national party. But to your point, or what this kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, there has to be kind of a barrier of entry. There has to be. They're probably not good the way they are now, but there has to be something.
I agree. There has to be something. I don't know what the right formula is to do this, because I think what we're at now is the bar is too high for independents to really and to be heard, without having money. And money should not be the determining factor for people being able to be heard and get into the election.
The thing that brings me back to gerrymandering, basically, in the first time around, because the reason that they can't crack in there is because the districts are carved in a way now where there's no room for independents to gain any ground. There's no room for moderates to gain any ground, because the Republican Party has basically carved out sections where you're guaranteed as a Republican candidate to win.
Yeah.
There's just no, unless you really drop the ball somehow. Like this is a Republican district. So then the race becomes to how can I out-Republican the last Republican, and it's the same on the Democratic side. So when you're only trying to buy the vote of your party, you're not worried about trying to buy anybody's vote. You're literally just trying to out-Republican or out-Democrat your opponent. And so now every election cycle, we get further and further away from the extremes, because now every election cycle, every candidate, you get Marjorie Taylor Greene, who the person that's going to beat Marjorie Taylor Greene in her 90% Republican voting district is to out MJT her. And that's a tall order. And if that would happen, we're even further away from the middle in a strongly Republican state, which has repercussions that kind of carry over into the national elections.
We talked on a previous episode, I think it was our President's Day episode, Aaron was saying, there's no way in hell I would ever be president of the United States. And then he was like, would you? And I'm like, hell yeah. Put me in as a write-in candidate, and if I get the majority of the votes, then I will gladly serve.
Hashtag vote AYSM.
Okay, I don't think that's gonna get me elected, but I appreciate that. We could do Brett.
That could be your slogan.
Hashtag Brett.
Right.
Are you shitting me?
But doing a little bit of research on that, the states have actually made it difficult for write-in candidates. I always thought that was the way to do it. If you are a third-party candidate and you want to make a difference, and maybe you're coming late to the game and to the election cycle, but you are very popular and people want you in, you can't just be a write-in candidate. If you are not registered to be a candidate in those states and approved to be a candidate, you can't get votes.
Interesting.
And I think part of that stems from people don't want Mickey Mouse to be the winning candidate.
Right.
And I get that. However, it also is a kind of a slap to the face. Like, you can't win,
It would be really difficult for somebody who had ideas of being a write-in candidate to get that kind of momentum going without getting enough attention to become a party of some sort.
Yeah.
Or to go through the route. Somebody like, even if, oh gosh, I really like Brett's message, so I'm going to fill out the paperwork for him so that I can get him registered to vote.
I need to come up with a message.
I don't think Kanye was the one going out there and getting signatures and filling out the paperwork to become a candidate. I think somebody's like, I think you could be president, dog. And then they're just like, and he's, yeah, whatever. Just don't ask me about my Israel-Palestine policies.
Dog. By the way, I found it. So 31 states require a write-in presidential candidate to file paperwork in advance of the election.
Interesting.
And
but that just means they have to file paperwork, right? So they still can.
You have to be organized and smart enough to go to all these states. Now, 10 states do not allow write-in candidates.
Interesting.
That's some bullshit, right?
Okay, so let's pick one of those states where they don't allow. You don't need to name it. You don't need to name it, but just
pick one.
Let's exist in that world. What happens if, say, Mickey Mouse gets 60% of the vote? What, as the state electoral board or whatever, do you think they should do to mitigate that or fix that problem? Who does it go to? The next...
Yeah, I think you'd have to follow the law, so at that point it would go to the next one. But I do think that would also spark some kind of conversations about, hey, we need to change this law then, if that's the case.
Right.
If more people are interested in this candidate that can't even get on the ballot.
There's a movie, I don't know if you guys have seen it, it's called Brewster's Millions. This is in your Richard Pryor. Yeah, I know. I actually love that movie.
It's a great movie.
But
I haven't seen that forever.
The overall concept of it resonates with me still now, because essentially he started a third party, but it was none of the above party. But his voting campaign was, don't vote for anybody. Don't vote for me. Don't vote for them. Don't vote for anybody. Yeah. And too many people wrote him in, and he won. Right. That kind of what would actually happen here. And in that case, in that movie, it was really all just a ploy to spend as much money as possible, which says a lot about what campaigns actually are for. But it resonated with me because it's what would happen? Who would that go to? It would be unfair. Could only have that election again, because it would be unfair, because that non-existent party that sucks so much air out of that political room that it would be unfair to just leave it to whoever's left.
Yeah.
And so I think that brings up more. It would probably bring up some discussions as far as is that allowed or not, but I think it would also just reaffirm the barriers of entry and what you actually need to do to become a party, more so than opening them up a little bit more.
Now, wasn't that a thing recently, the none of the above?
In Brewster's Milling, that was what, 70s, 80s? So not that recent.
No, some other election thing, like more recent.
Do you remember?
I'm surprised nobody's remade that movie. You know, like
who would be the actor to be the candidate?
Richard. I mean, as far as like who replaced
not Richard Pryor, dude. You can't do it again.
Oh no, he's not around. Who's the new Richard Pryor? I mean, you could probably put something like Kevin Hart in there and
like The Rock.
It'd be fine.
The Rock.
Actually, Kevin Hart would probably be pretty good.
He'd be good at anything.
That would be.
You imagine a role where he would spice that movie up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would revitalize the Transformers franchise. I'm just kidding. I think they do The Rock in that one too. Did they ask him to revitalize that franchise? I fell off of Transformers after the third one.
Yeah,
so.
it kind of got way out of line. It just got weird. So.
I think I saw Mark Wahlberg in one. I don't know what that's about.
Is that Marky Mark?
I don't get out and see movies, so.
But yeah, I actually didn't know any of those rules for writing candidates for.
Look at that, bringing the facts and educating the masses.
We appreciate you joining us here.
Of
Adrian.
course.
This has been a very fun discussion. I've really enjoyed you being here. And this is a blast. We'd have to have you back maybe after the election. See what happens then.
So we can
tell everybody where they went wrong.
I was going to say, so we can finally reveal who our candidates are.
Thank you as well for bringing this beer. This was amazing. I finished mine early on.
Yeah, me too. It was tasty.
Before
very
we
good.
Started talking. So.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you guys for having me. I always love talking politics, so it's nice to have it directed in a constructive way.
Again, it goes back to that point. We need to be able to talk. All three of us are different in our ideologies as far as political views and whatnot. And this is one of the things that I think is wrong with our country, is that you can't just sit and have a conversation and learn.
Over a beer.
See, Barack Obama was right. You bring everybody together and have a beer.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
I'm sorry. What was the brewery?
Bow Arrow Brewing Company in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Where are they located?
Not far from the intersection of I-40 and I-25.
Just Vote is the name of the beer. It's really good, actually. It's smooth. It's good stuff.
I really enjoyed that.
If only the election process were that smooth.
Oh, way to bring
Nicely
it home.
done.
Bringing it home.
If you like what you're hearing today, check us out at aysm.show. That is our webpage. You can also go to all the socials and find us there on Facebook and Instagram. You can also check us out at Untapped at AYSM_show.
It's true.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Adrian, what are we going to be talking about next time?
The smoothest and most